Hello, and thank you for joining me on my program tonight. I have a message that I feel God has given to me for this hour, but it's going to be a two-part. So tonight we'll pick up on part one, and then the next program we'll pick up the final piece. Tonight's message and the next one will be on Joseph. You know, the title of tonight's message is, Can It Get Any Worse? Can it get any worse? Have you ever said that? I suspect most of us have from one time to the other, thinking surely we've seen the worst of the worst and this is it. Well, I have a character in the Bible that I want to talk to us about, and I've already told you it was Joseph. Maybe you might have thought, oh, surely she's going to talk about Job. But no, God gave us so much detail in Joseph's life that I would think one of his thinking would be, can it get any worse? So let's watch. Let's just begin with in Genesis chapter 37, verses 3 through 11. Now Israel, which was also Jacob's name, loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was a son of his old age. Also he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, Then, behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. Indeed, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even the more for his dreams and for his words. We know that Joseph had yet another dream along the same line, and he told that one to his brothers also. And his brothers, verse 11, and his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So Joseph, two dreams, shared them with his brothers. First, let's understand that the dreams really did come from the Lord. Joseph wasn't inventing these. He wasn't going out there and trying to think of ways to irritate his brothers. He was excited. He had these dreams. Should he have told his brothers? I don't know, because you see, God gave Joseph the dream. He didn't give it to the brothers. Sometimes maybe there's wisdom in keeping it to ourselves, what God has shown us for the hour. But he was 17, folks. And sometimes when we're young, we don't think of the other's perspective first. Maybe we should. But Joseph didn't, and he shared his dreams. So we know that they only served to make the brothers even more jealous. Now, another thing that the word tells us was that Joseph was loved above his brothers because he was the son of Jacob's old age. So that just added more jealousy. Oh, and then we know that the father gave him a beautiful multicolored coat, more jealousy. And there comes a day when Jacob sends Israel out to go check on his brothers. Yeah, I think that's the right word, check on his brothers. Now, yes, he took them food out to the field. The brothers were out tending the sheep, and he took them food. But I really think it was more like, check up on those brothers of yours and come back, Jacob says, and tell me how they're doing. So let's pick up about right there. Genesis chapter 37, verses 18 through 24. Now when they, the brothers, saw him afar off, Joseph, even before he came near them, they conspired to kill him. Then they said to one another, Look, this dreamer is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. And we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. You know, Satan wants to kill the dream, and so he goes after the dreamer. Joseph had dreams. They wanted to attack the dreamer. Satan always will go after the dreamer. Have you ever had a dream or a vision or something that you know God planted deep within your spirit, and you know that it's bigger than anything you could have imagined? It is from God because you couldn't figure this out any other way. You know it. And then so it's not long until either a physical pain or something, grief, or there's something that seems to just attack you from every angle. Satan goes after the dreamer. The dreams won't happen if the dreamer just disappears. That's Satan's way of dealing with it. But God never leaves us. Folks, here's the good news. When God gives you a dream, He plans on it occurring. He plans on it happening. So if God has given you something tonight, hold on to it, no matter what is going on in your world all around you, what's being attacked in your direction, finances, physical, grief, relationships. If God gave you something, don't let go of that hope. Satan would try to go after the dreamer to squelch the dream. However, God will not allow it. Let's watch. In verse 21, but Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. Reuben was going to show up at a later hour and maybe pull the boy up and get him back to his father. Verse 23, so it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. And then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. Okay. My guess is, and you know, I like to pretend along with the character of the Bible, I'm Joseph. Now, if I'm Joseph, I see my brothers, they've taken off my coat, I can see their angry faces, their voices, and my father is in the faraway land. I am here, and there is no one to defend me, or so it seems. I'm begging, don't do this. Why would you do this? Don't hurt me. Don't do this. Don't. I want to go back home. Stop. But they throw him in the pit. My title tonight is, How Much Worse Can It Get? Joseph at first thought, they're going to kill me. They're trying to kill me. And then he's thrown into the pit. I'm alive. But then he looks around. Wait a minute. There's not even any water in here. I'm going to die. Do you understand that we can have these highs and lows and highs and lows? We can have hope, and then it just seems to be squelched. Joseph he wasn't killed. He was thrown into a pit. Well, good news, I'm still alive. Bad news, there's no water. Joseph was on a roller coaster of an emotional journey at that point. Sometimes we get in that same boat or that same pit. We look around and we don't see water. We didn't see what was about to come. In Genesis chapter 37, verses 25 to 28, and they sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted their eyes, these are the brothers. And they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. And let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." Now they're greed. What's in it for us? We can get some money out of this brother of ours. And his brothers listened. Then Midianites, traders, passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up. I'm Joseph again. Oh, thank the Lord, they have changed their mind. I'm going home to Daddy. They pulled me out of this pit, the one that didn't have any water. I bet they're feeling really bad about right now. Wait a minute, what are y'all doing? What? I don't want to go with them. I don't know them. You see, the next thing that happened was they pulled him out of the pit, all right, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. He didn't want to go there. What was going on? Why all this? What have I done? He really hadn't done anything, folks. These Midianite traders, they could care less that Joseph wanted to go back to his father, and they could care less that he was his father's favorite son, and they could care less that it would break his father's heart. They had just bought themselves a slave, and they were going to Egypt. Joseph was now heading to Egypt. Now, once again, wait. I don't understand, Father. I don't understand, Lord. Have you said that? It went from wonderful. You had this vision. You had this dream. God had showed you something so profound, and yet it just seems like one after the other, and you get a little bit of hope, and then down you go. Folks, God always has a plan, and I'm going to show this in tonight's teaching. In Genesis chapter 39, let's begin in verse 1. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, Pharaoh was the king, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Verse 6. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Potiphar's wife began to cast her eye toward Joseph, this young and handsome man. She began to try her best to pull him in toward her, but he was trustworthy, he was obedient, and he was loyal to his master. Even in a situation that he did not choose to be in and that he did not want, he had character, godly character, loyal, obedient, and trustworthy. We're not talking Boy Scouts here, we're talking God's scouts. He was God's chosen one for the hour. And God had given him these visions because Joseph had a character about him that was based upon trustworthiness, honesty, and he was loyal to whoever he was under. Loyalty was paying off, but not in this house. The wife, as she once again tried to seduce him and bring him in toward her, he flees the house, and she grabs his coat as he runs out the door. Once again, he finds himself in prison. He found himself in a situation of worry and death. Again, what's going on? I don't understand. I didn't do anything. Again, the word says God was with him. Now he's not a slave, he's a prisoner. I don't know if that's any better or not. He's not a slave, he's a prisoner. But once again, because of his loyalty, his honesty, his integrity, he's promoted to the head prisoner of the king's prison. Two of Pharaoh's servants, a butler and a baker, are now thrown into prison. We don't know what they did, but there was something that made the king mad, and in the prison they go. By this point, Joseph has earned such a status that he is assigned to overlook or to care for these king's prisoners, the butler and the baker. And he does that very well, and so much so that he is aware that their facial countenance has changed, their sadness, different than what he saw yesterday. How often do we pay attention to the people around us? Are we aware of when they're in sorrow and sadness or joy? You know, sometimes they just want to tell us what happened that was great. But sometimes there's a depth inside of them that we only know when we're caring for people. And Joseph had that kind of caring. And he asked them, what's wrong? And they say, we had a dream, both of them that night, and we don't know what it is. Picking up in chapter 41. Let's don't go there just yet. Joseph says, tell me your dreams, and he goes and God gives him the interpretation. The butler is to live and the baker is to die, both in 3 days. Now then, Joseph tells the butler his story, and the butler's so excited. But before the butler leaves the prison, Joseph only asks one favor, one. Please mention my name to the king. I'm innocent, that I might be heard. You see, Joseph, he never was given a voice in this, was he? He had no voice. 2 years passed, folks, 2 years. That butler was in fact restored to Pharaoh, and 2 years, long years, are gone. I'm Joseph. You know, I treated the butler so well. I cared for him. I gave him the interpretation of his dream, and now he's back serving the king, and I'm still here. I wonder, did he tell the king? I wonder, or did he just forget me? I don't know. I just know that it was my one shot at it, and I tried. It's been 1 year, now 2 years, and I haven't heard a thing. I'm still the head prisoner. Oh, I wish that I knew if he'd even tried. You see, we so often don't get the feedback we want when we ask for a favor. We'd like to have it. But if our trust is in someone else, it could be a long wait. Our trust must be in God. What was the start of the story? God gave Joseph 2 dreams. And those dreams showed something to him that was to become. Joseph is in a very long becoming stage. 2 years, and the king now has a dream. He calls for all the magicians, he calls for all the ones that would normally be called in, and none can answer it. None can interpret his dream. And suddenly the butler says, "Oh, Pharaoh, forgive me my fault, my wrong. I have forgotten. When I was in prison, there was a prison guard, a prisoner, head of the prisoner, a young man by the name of Joseph. He interpreted mine and the baker's dream to the T. He knew what God gave it to him. And all of it came to pass. The king says, go get this young man. Let's pick up in chapter 41, verse 37. So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all the servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find such a one as this?" You see, Pharaoh did call Joseph out of prison. Joseph did come and interpret the dream. There was something about Joseph that immediately won a place in the king's heart that no other person in all of the country could win. The magicians couldn't do it. The sorcerers, all the ones that might have been called, no one could help the king. But when Joseph entered the scene, he was the one. So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Now then, Joseph was 30 years old at this point of promotion. How old was he when he had the dreams? 17. 13 years of, can it get any worse? Thrown into the pit, I'm alive, but there's no water. Pulled out, surely they're ready to apologize. Wait a minute, I don't want to be sold. And then from there, sold to another one. Oh, now, fine, I'm in charge of the master's house. I want to go back to my house. Can it get any worse? Oh, his wife lies on him and just cheats and lies and tells more lies and holds his coat, and now he's in prison, soon promoted to the head of the prison. Can it get any worse? Pulled out of the prison and said, "Tell the king what dreams he dreamed." You know, my title, Can It Get Any Worse? But there was a scripture that we read, and it's all throughout. It's mentioned more than once. God was with Joseph. Does it look like God was with Joseph? Have you ever had those times when you're thinking, can it get any worse? And yet somebody says, God is with you. You don't feel it. If this is God is with me, what's going on? God was with Joseph. What was going on? Okay, let's look. Back his father had told him, go check on them. Go check on your brothers, because he trusted the report that he would hear out of his son, this son. I don't know how much he had trust in the others, but we know that Joseph he trusted. So we know that already before age 17, there was an obedience, because he didn't argue about it. He didn't say, "Father, you know they hate me." He didn't do any of that. He said, "Yes, Father," and he took off with the food for those brothers. And he went to go and give it to them, and then he was to come back. We know that in the position, every position that he went to, beginning with the slave to the prison, to the home, back and forth, he was always at a higher level. Let's think about that for a minute. God was maneuvering him in a situation from one direction to this position, and each one went up a little bit higher. The pit, the slave, traded into a particular house. This house was one of the king's lead guards. Okay, now, these troops wouldn't have got him to the king. His father wouldn't have got him to the king. He was traded upward, so to speak. Now he's in the Potiphar's house, but he's cast into prison, not just any prison. He's cast into the king's prison. Do you see a little dot to dot to dot beginning to happen? He's cast into the king's prison. And it's not just any prisoner that he interprets a dream for. It's the king's butler and baker who now go back to his presence. Another dot to dot. God was working on his behalf. What was Joseph picking up? He was picking up a degree, God's degree. It's called a degree in accounting and record keeping, a degree in business management, a degree in dream interpretation, a degree in patience and listening, a degree in social skills, a degree in farm management, a degree in food management. When he was in that prison, I doubt if there was a whole bunch of food coming his way. They probably had to ration it. When he was over the master's house, and certainly at that point in good standing, he was over all the property, everything, all the accounting of the land. Now he's in a position, trained position, to do for the king the position that God has put him into for the saving of his family. Next week, we're going to pick up on Joseph again with a different angle. But for you tonight, if I have touched on can it get any worse? Remember something in this piece. God was pulling Joseph ever upward, although it did not look like it. God had him in the training of life. He got a life skills education for what God was about to appoint him into for the saving of not just his family, but of a nation. God is using you. Trust him, and I will see you next week. God bless you.
We hope you've enjoyed Kingdom Ministries with Reverend Dee Levens. For more from Dee, read The Long, Long Night, The Story of Destiny, and Echoes from God, a Christian study book for growing deep and strong in the faith. Connect with Dee and purchase her books at deelevens.com. Send an email to deelevenstv@gmail.com or text Dee at 254-681-6099.